Okay, good morning. If you're on the East Coast, if you're on the West Coast, good earlier morning. We will give folks a few minutes to gather, but I want to get started because we have a lot to get through today. So hello and welcome to Wi-Fi at Work. I'm Ellen Satterwhite, Vice President at the Glen Echo Group, and I'm thrilled that you all have joined us for another edition of our Wi-Fi at Work digital event hosted by Wi-Fi Forward. For those of you that don't know us, Wi-Fi Forward is a coalition working to make more spectrum available for unlicensed and shared use, for everything from Wi-Fi to Bluetooth and CBRS to how we use it, telemedicine, distance learning, and if you are like me, everything these days. So this week, we'll bring you a conversation about Wi-Fi and the way it's supporting our global economy. It's safe, I think, to say that it does so every day, but especially during this pandemic when so much of our economy and society depends on being able to function over distance. So first, some housekeeping. For the sake of time, we won't be accepting questions during the webinar, but if you have questions for our speaker, please email us at info@wififorward.com or send me a direct message or anything on Twitter, and we will connect you with the right people to help. And after the webinar, we'll be uploading the video to YouTube and circulating it via email, so you'll have it to review and send around, and we certainly hope you do. So now I'd like to turn our attention to today's topic. We all know that Wi-Fi provides an underpinning to our daily lives, work, play, school, and so much more. But can we quantify the economic benefit of Wi-Fi's contributions in dollars and cents? Certainly at Wi-Fi Forward, we have produced studies over the year, and we've been fortunate enough to work with the Wi-Fi Alliance on things in the past. But two studies commissioned by the Wi-Fi Alliance over the past few months have really added to our body of knowledge on this subject. So first, we have new data on what Wi-Fi delivers to the global and national economies in terms of direct GDP contributions and follow-on impacts, how Wi-Fi and unlicensed spectrum really drive industry in our economy. And then, given the times, the Wi-Fi Alliance also has work talking about Wi-Fi's role in mitigating the negative economic effects of the COVID pandemic. So this work explores how Wi-Fi is key to digital resilience in our communities, saving both money and time. So I will stop talking because we have with us Alex Roytblat of the Wi-Fi Alliance. Alex is Vice President of Worldwide Regulatory Affairs, where he is responsible for the organization's overall regulatory strategy. And in this role, he works with the Wi-Fi Alliance members and the executive team on the development of regulatory objectives, and he directs advocacy for the implementation of those objectives with governments, regulators, and international organizations. So while we are lucky to have him US focused a little bit today, his scope is international, and I think he'll talk a little bit about that. So I'll kick this over to Alex to get started and tell us about this research. Alex?
All right. Well, thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Wi-Fi Forward, for having us share the results of this very important study. So I know our time is limited, so I will just jump right into it. And I prepared a few slides, which I'll try to put on the screen. And please tell me you can see them.
We can, and if you want to hit your presentation, it's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Good. Moving forward. So as Ellen pointed out, we completed a study. It was released last month in February, and it's actually a revision of our previous study, and I'll provide you more background on that. Before I start, I just wanted to introduce Wi-Fi Alliance to those who may not have interacted with our organization. We are a collaborative forum of over 850 member companies from all around the world dedicated to advancing Wi-Fi ecosystem, ensuring its compatibility, and of course its growth, and also advocating for favorable regulatory environments for Wi-Fi technology, again, around the world. So the economic value study that I'm here to talk to you today is actually a revision of the study we have done in 2018. And so the projections for this study that was released on the economic value are for 2021 and 2025, so a 5-year look ahead period. And what we did in this iteration of this economic analysis is to look at 15 different economies around the world, and some developing countries, developed countries, as you can see in different regions of the world. And I obviously encourage you to go to our website, thevalueofwifi.org, where you can take a look at the studies and also get additional information. So with that, let me just pull this up. I have added this quote, not for the sentimental reasons, but to point an important consideration for policymakers that need to account for the economic benefit, not just the cost of Wi-Fi or in making the policy. We tend to value things, but by their price or by how much we paid for them. So for example, a new car is $30,000 and that's its value. But to understand the true economic value, we need to consider how much is it worth to us, or how much would someone had to pay for us to give it up. The other day I asked my daughter, how much would I have to pay her to stop using Wi-Fi just for 1 year? At first, she flatly refused to even consider this possibility, but relented and settled at $1 million. Now, I understand my daughter has an ethereal appreciation for $1 million, but it's emblematic of the fact that Wi-Fi provides a much greater value than what we actually pay for it. The economists call this consumer surplus. So today, as I share results of this economic study, please consider how much is Wi-Fi worth to you? Or better yet, how much would someone have to pay you to stop using Wi-Fi for 1 year? I would expect that the value is significant. And that's what comprises the economic estimate in the study. So it's the consumer surplus, or the value that we all as consumers derive from Wi-Fi, the producer surplus, the producers, so for example, factories that use Wi-Fi for controlling their robotic operations, right? So instead of laying fiber through concrete floors of the factory, they can communicate with the robot using Wi-Fi. How much is that worth to them? So producer surplus is significant. And of course, the GDP contribution, which is the actual value of goods and services that Wi-Fi contributes. So those are three main components of the economic value that was estimated in the study. And the results are impressive. Again, I mentioned that we did the similar study back in 2018, and it turns out back in 2018, we underestimated or underprojected the value of Wi-Fi. In fact, the value has gone up significantly, as you can see, over 150% by 2025 from 2018. So the projections we had in 2018 were for again, a 5-year look ahead period, so 2018, 2023. So these projections have been proven, and in fact, the actual numbers exceed the projections that we had. And what also is important is the value of the 6 gigahertz spectrum, or Wi-Fi 6E, which is the technology that was introduced earlier this year. So what's projected is that the value of Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, is forecast to be around 58 billion in 2021, but will go up almost 10 times, maybe 9 times. I'm doing the math real quick here, in 5 years. So this is a significant component of the economic value, this new Wi-Fi technology, the latest generation. And so it's obviously goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, why Wi-Fi is a key economic engine for our digital economy. So what are the the main drivers for this economic value. So residential, of course, is the highest or the main driver for the value. Just think how much value each one of us derives, that we don't have to run wires to have connectivity in every corner of our homes. It simply would be impossible to go without it. And of course, all the Wi-Fi that we get to control things and run things like IoT and all that. The enterprise value, so again, the factory manufacturers or other businesses that use Wi-Fi for their business function, or even offices. And I am working right now talking to you over Wi-Fi. So of course, both my organization and I derive value out of that. Manufacturing, so these are actual goods being produced and equipment on the market. That's a significant value. The ISP, I'm actually surprised that it came in as low as it did. This is the traffic offload. So if you think about the amount of time that you spend on Wi-Fi while with your smartphone, for example, while paying for the service to your carrier, it is significant. And the amount of value you derive, and the fact that our carriers can afford to be so generous as to provide us with unlimited data plans, is only because most of the traffic is offloaded to Wi-Fi. We don't use it while we drive or go for a jog in the park. We use it when we're at home or in the office. And again, during that time, most of the time, we are on Wi-Fi. And free Wi-Fi, an important component which benefits the consumers and businesses. So when you go into Starbucks and you buy a cup of coffee, well, the fact that it comes with free Wi-Fi in Starbucks, that's an important consideration as well. Would you prefer a coffee shop with Wi-Fi, with free Wi-Fi, or without the free Wi-Fi? So these are the main drivers for the economic value. And here are the results just for the United States. Almost $1 trillion in value in 2021. And that's projected to go up 60% to 1.6 trillion by 2025. So these numbers are significant. And in terms of jobs, again, about 500,000 jobs, over 500,000 in 21, going up to almost 750,000 in 25. So the value of Wi-Fi and its importance to our economy should not be underestimated. And here are the results for other countries. Again, all this information is available in our study, which is online. But as you can see, it's not just the United States. Countries around the world are deriving the value of Wi-Fi, and that has been manifested in their decisions. We have seen Europe, Brazil, South Korea, others move forward on making additional spectrum available for Wi-Fi. And we completely understand the spectrum is a precious natural resource and very limited, but yet the regulators and policymakers understand that to support this technology, they need to make spectrum available. And here is why. We can put the numbers next to the decisions that are being made by policymakers. And just while we have this audience, I want to touch on the role Wi-Fi plays in mitigating the COVID pandemic. So the statistics, we're still in the pandemic, and so the statistics are still developing. And they usually lag by about a year or so by the time the data is collected. But the preliminary studies that we're seeing indicate a significant increase in the use of Wi-Fi on all aspects. So what I have here, what I have here is the number of the Ofcom study. Ofcom is the UK regulator, and they're reporting, and this data is old by today's standards, I guess. It's from April of last year, I think, but when the pandemic was hitting us. But they were seeing significant increase in Wi-Fi use and the times that the duration of time that Wi-Fi is being used. And then the AirTie study also indicating that on many factors, the Wi-Fi use has gone up significantly. And this is also what's important is the last bullet on the AirTie study. The lack of spectrum results in degradation in performance, and so that degradation manifests itself as the use goes up. And so in countries where the spectrum is limited or not available, the users are experiencing degradation the more use there is. And here is a few interesting charts that show how the use of Wi-Fi increased with COVID. So on the left, you can see the global Wi-Fi traffic and how it gone up starting in March of last year during the pandemic. It gone up by 80%, and I would expect that curve has continued its trajectory as we progress through the pandemic. Again, these numbers are for April last year, and we can't get real-time statistics. That's the challenge. And then on the right, you can see the daily activity spread over 24-hour period. So of course, in the middle of the night, early morning, the activity is low. But then during the day, and as everyone goes to work remotely now, you can see how the use of Wi-Fi has gone up significantly during the busy hours, and the number of busy hours has gone up as well. And just to close out, I just wanted to highlight how much our industry is doing in addressing this COVID pandemic. Our members have been reporting that they have been providing hotspots, eliminating late fees, donating equipment, and to support the healthcare professionals, hospitals, but also schools and other important applications that require connectivity. I don't think anyone can go without connectivity, and Wi-Fi is obviously a critical tool for that. So these are important links, and I encourage you to visit them. And as I mentioned at the beginning, all this information that I shared with you is available in greater detail on our website, along with our 2018 study, along with materials that summarize the results of the analysis. If you don't feel like reading 400 pages of economic study, they're nicely summarized in a short brief. And I just wanted to close by pointing out that Wi-Fi is no longer a technology that is optional. This is a critical component of our telecommunication infrastructure, critical from the economic standpoint, but also critical from the social standpoint. And so that's the one takeaway from this discussion, and that's great. All right, and that's it for me. So Ellen, back to you.
Thank you, Alex. I do want to commend you for taking sort of a generation of economic theory and being able to put it into 2 slides that explain the producer surplus and the consumer surplus and GDP growth in 45 seconds. Go. But more to the point, I think this was a lot of kind of critical information in a short amount of time, and I want to dig in a little bit more. And, I am struck whenever I see these analyses. This latest one by Wi-Fi Alliance kind of shows it particularly well, that about the concept that actually Wi-Fi contributes more to economic value than we think it will. When we're actually pretty bad at projecting forward, we get these big numbers, and we think, oh, that's massive, and we should move forward. And then looking back, we're able to say, no, actually, here was the impact. Do you think that this massive economic impact of Wi-Fi and unlicensed spectrum is well understood by regulators and policymakers, or do you think we have some work to do?
Well, good question, Helen. We all work to do.
Sure.
I don't think we can spend enough time trying to inform policymakers and regulators around the world on the importance of Wi-Fi. One of the challenges is it's difficult to put a price tag on Wi-Fi. So, for example, I'll use myself as an example again. How much did I pay for Wi-Fi? Well, so I have an access point which I bought for a couple of $100, and the chipsets in the smartphone or my computer are literally in the noise level. So if that's the value, then that's great. But how much do I derive? How much would you have to pay me to give up Wi-Fi, which I use for work, for entertainment, for socializing, for everything nowadays? And so it would be significantly higher than my actual expenditures. But on average, we tend to focus on dollar signs and not think of the whole picture, and that is very important. And that's why your job and my job is so important, is that we need to deliver this information to the decision makers and make sure that they're aware of it.
That's no pressure, but I appreciate that. And when I really appreciated how you led the conversation, except that I have the Joni Mitchell song stuck in my head for probably the first 30 seconds that you were talking. Yeah. So that aside, the concept of thinking about what your life would be like, what our lives would be like, but also, when we start talking about equity in society and communication systems that are supportive of the outcomes we want to see, I think you can't imagine those systems without Wi-Fi. I mean, particularly today, but moving forward, as we talk about speeds getting faster and everything that will need that kind of connectivity, being more inclusive in our society really depends on having access to ubiquitous, cost-effective, fast low latency communication. So not to evangelize too much, but I totally agree with you. I like the way you put it that way. We talk a lot. I know Wi-Fi Alliance is one of your main jobs is sitting at the intersection of industry and regulators and policymakers around the world. You have this data. You also have the data that you shared about how our Wi-Fi use has increased and changed during at least the first part of the pandemic. How is industry looking at this data? How are they using it in their business operations?
Well, I think that the projections kind of drive the understanding among companies that Wi-Fi is going to become even more important and as a product line for their development. Obviously they're in the business of selling products or selling services, and Wi-Fi will become an even bigger component that it's already been for many of these companies, because the use of Wi-Fi with the COVID pandemic, as data demonstrates, has gone up. And I don't expect it to go down at any point. It was going up before the pandemic. It's certainly gone up significantly during the pandemic. And post-pandemic, it will not go down. So as far as the telecommunication industry in general and the capability that Wi-Fi provides in telecom, it will grow in its importance from where it started. So 20 years ago, Wi-Fi was just an experiment. It was cool to show off computers that had no wires and yet had connectivity. But things have changed. Now it's an essential part of pretty much any electronic device, from wireless speakers to refrigerators to washing machines to cars. Everything needs to be connected, and usually the best way to connect it is through Wi-Fi.
That's I was just thinking, I have a brand new Instant Pot that has Wi-Fi, and at first I thought, why would I ever want a Wi-Fi connected Instant Pot? Except I do, because I turn it off when I'm doing my concentric circle walks around the neighborhood. You know, I have to turn it on and off. But in all seriousness, we've got a few minutes left. I do want to turn to what's next, particularly for our regulatory focused audience. This drives a lot of your day. And I think we should talk a little bit about how the US has been a leader, particularly, no offense to our international colleagues, but that on a bipartisan basis, there's really been forward-leaning policies relating to Wi-Fi over the last couple of years. What are the main policies for a US audience to keep their eye on? What's going on internationally? You know, no pressure, you've only got a couple of minutes, but can you just summarize for us what's going on?
Well, I'll try. So of course, the 6 gigahertz decision last year by FCC was transformative for our industry. It allowed introduction of Wi-Fi 6E, which is the next generation technology, and the 6 gigahertz enables this bandwidth that is absolutely necessary to maintain not just the throughput that required because of all this traffic generated in Wi-Fi, but also low latency, which we often ignore as a factor, but now latency becoming more and more important with real-time high definition video and with virtual reality and with the multitude of applications. But in US, the job is about 2/3 finished on the regulatory front on the 6 gigahertz, with the farther notice of proposed rulemaking is still out there. And we're hopeful that the decision will come through soon, because we're seeing other countries move forward on 6 gigahertz to enable the very low power indoor applications. For those who don't know, very low power indoor are the wearable devices. This is where the industry is moving to. So having low power applications, but lots of devices connected to whatever we do is quite important. I just saw a commercial for one of the companies that said the future of health is on your wrist. So think about it, how much data is being collected with this very low power device, but the decision by FCC is still pending, while we're seeing the similar decisions being taken in Europe. South Korea, Brazil, just last week, I think, adopted a decision to allow this type of operations in 6 gigahertz. So we are hopeful that US will maintain its leadership and its role as the leading regulator for promoting Wi-Fi technology. And that's what we're working on.
Again, that's easy. You're done, aren't you? No.
I think so.
I am mindful of our time and of your time in particular, but Alex, I think this has been really instructive for us. And I know we are going to talk about Wi-Fi 6E in the coming weeks, and look forward to where our colleagues in government in the US go, but also internationally. So with that, I will say thank you very much for your time, and thank you to our audience. The video of this conversation will be available at wififorward.org. We also will have links to all of Wi-Fi Alliance's research, and I will just say watch this space, because you all are always putting things out there for the industry that really give us a better picture of where we will be going. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.